Do 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 do. Come on in here. Boom boom boom. I think I'll take a simultaneous sip without you, but I'll do one when you're ready to. All right. Get your beverage? Yes, yes. I've been working since 5 a.m., actually. The opposite of sleeping in. Those of you here early, take a sip. Because I'm late, I put on my TV shirt for you. Thought I'd dress up a little bit, make this a little bit of a sort of a special Periscope. So I've got a few topics here. I was watching, I think it was the editor for The Hill, say that he was speculating, and again, this is without the benefit of evidence, but he was speculating that all of this Russia stuff would eventually tie back to Hillary Clinton, or the Clinton campaign specifically. And my first thought about that was, well, that's not going to happen. I mean, it's not going to be true that everything about Russia, it all ties back to Hillary Clinton. But just for fun, let's play with that hypothesis. Now, the context that most of you know, especially if you read my book, Win Bigly, is that I don't believe we people, we humans, we Homo sapiens, I don't believe we see reality the way it actually is in some objective sense. I think we're all running different movies in our heads, and we keep those movies going until the evidence just makes it impossible for us to keep our movie alive, and then we call for a rewrite. So I'm going to suggest that the filter on reality that says that Hillary Clinton is behind everything may not be true, and in fact I have no reason to think it's true, but watch how well it fits the evidence. And the lesson here is not that Hillary Clinton is behind everything, because I don't think that's true, but watch how easily I can make the case. And I'm going to pick just one element that I believe the editor for The Hill, I wish I could remember his name, didn't even mention. So this is on top of the fact that he thinks this Russia stuff will end up tying back to the Clinton campaign. Now keep in mind that there's some connection between the dossier, which was paid for by the Clinton campaign, that's one connection, and then there seems to be some, Sidney Blumenthal connection. He may have provided information, to which I say, well, maybe. That would be two Clinton connections. Then there's the question of a British retired agent, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Clintons probably have really good connections in all levels of government and probably even the intelligence services of Great Britain. So it fits that if Hillary was behind it all, and again, I'm not saying she is, I'm just working through the conspiracy theory to show you that you can make the facts fit anything, she would have the connections in Great Britain. Great Britain would have the same motive, which is they think, oh my God, we don't want Trump to get elected. So their motive might be the same as Clinton's. And they would have the opportunity. They've got this guy, Christopher Steele. He's retired, but how retired are you really ever? People telling me I sound naive. I haven't even gotten to the naive part. Just stay tuned, it gets worse. So you can imagine that everything that Christopher Steele collected for his dossier may have come from actual sources, but those sources might have also been contacted by Clinton people ahead of time. Like, hey, when Christopher Steele comes and asks you a question, just give him a bunch of crap. Just make up a bunch of stuff. Nobody's going to check. So it's possible that it's true. It's possible that Hillary Clinton is behind every part of the Russian thing. Again, I'm not saying that happened. I don't believe that's true. But it would be easy to imagine it because all the the pieces of the puzzle fit together quite well. But let me take you to another place that's been bugging me for a while. One of the things that is said in the news quite often is that the Russian interference with the election is verified. That we know for sure that the Russians interfered with the election. And two examples that are often given make me scratch my head. One is that we know that the hackers were Russian, the ones that got Hillary Clinton's email. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I would like to be fact-checked on this. But my understanding is there's no such thing as knowing for sure where a hack came from. Because if you're a good hacker, you leave clues that it's someone else, and you might leave clues that it's Russian. I can tell you that I've spoken personally to someone who's done that. Someone who in his past was a hacker, and in his past made it look like Russia was to blame. Now, I don't know what the context was for that, but it's a thing. Now, is it possible that our intelligence services have extra ways to find out? I'm skeptical, because they haven't said that. Nobody has said, I haven't heard anybody say, well, in the normal world, even the top experts can't figure out where a hack came from for sure, but in our secret NSA Homeland Security way, we can. Nobody has said that. It might be true. Maybe they can. But nobody said that. The other thing you hear is that 17 intelligence agencies are all agree that Russia was behind stuff. And here I would appeal to anyone who is over, let's say, the age of 30 and has worked at any kind of a large business. If you're over 30, meaning you have some experience, and you've ever worked for a large organization of any kind, you know that it's not true that 17 agencies agreed. You know that's not true. You know that's not true. Here's what might be true. It might be true that one of the agencies, let's say the CIA, decided it was true. And then maybe they checked with the other agencies and they said, hey, do you guys have anything extra? And they said, no, we just have the same stuff you have. What do you think? And the CIA says, well, we think Russia did it. Do you have any reason to disagree with that? No. Do you agree with our assessment? Well, we're not going to look at it in detail because you've done the work. We haven't. But if you say it's true, we're not going to disagree with you. So count us in. In all likelihood, one entity studied this. And the other 16 said, yeah, we trust the CIA. They're using the methods we understand. Of course it's true. Why wouldn't it be true? We totally back it. And then suddenly it turns into 17 agencies independently came to the same conclusion. That didn't happen. There's almost no chance that happened. Moreover, what we've seen from the FBI, Department of Justice, any large organization, is that when you say one organization came to a conclusion, let's be real. What we mean is that whoever the boss was came to a conclusion. Right? Because you don't hear about the dissenting voices in the CIA. At least I hope you don't. We shouldn't be hearing from them. We should only hear what the boss told them is their CIA opinion. So probably when people are saying there are 17 agencies that all looked into it and came to the same conclusion about Russia, I don't know this to be true, but if the CIA and intelligence agencies are like every other big organization in the world, and why wouldn't they be, at least in this particular way, probably there were just a few people in one organization that had the right information, and probably just one person is the one who said, all right, here is our opinion. Probably just one person. Probably one person appointed by, Obama, maybe a Clinton ally. Could be. All right, but I'm not even getting to my point yet. The thing that's been bothering me the most is this Russian troll farm Now, if you know the story, there's a firm in Russia that is funded, it's a startup-ish kind of firm, that was funded by an oligarch who has ties to Putin. Now, the first thing you need to know is that if you're an oligarch in Russia, you have ties to Putin. Probably all the oligarchs have ties to Putin. Otherwise, what kind of oligarch are you? Secondly, who do we think funds all the startups in Russia? It's not poor people. Probably oligarchs are doing a lot of the funding for lots of different startups. So when you say there's a troll farm and some of their money came from a Russian oligarch, maybe you're just saying it's a startup. Because my guess is any largish, operating startup probably has some money from an oligarch who probably has a connection to Putin, because that's what oligarchs do. So, but here's the part that's bothering me about this troll farm. Their budget apparently was only $100,000. And we are to believe that the government of Russia was playing this massive, spy chess game using this entity, and that their budget was only $100,000 to affect the United States elections, their advertising budget. And then, of course, it took us a long time, but we finally saw the actual ads that they put out. And the ads are terrible. They look like a high school project. There's no spycraft at all in them. It looks like a company that's just not very good at being a troll. Now, some of them apparently did get people like Black Lives Matter and stuff to organize, and those were more hoaxish, but I don't think they had much impact on the election. And they certainly weren't good for Trump. Because, if a Russian troll farm got Black Lives Matter to organize in a way that they wouldn't have otherwise, in other words, to do more stuff, that's not good for President Trump. That's bad for him. So that part doesn't make sense. Why would you hire the troll farm to do things for the president that are clearly bad for the president? Does the troll farm not even know what side they're on? So it seems to me far more likely that this troll farm was working on a private contract. You see where I'm going with this? The troll farm might have gotten its instructions from Putin, but if they did, Putin's going to be really mad at them for doing such a bad job. I mean, a really bad job. They got caught. That's as bad as you can get. That's not even trying. Doesn't it seem to you slightly more likely? Again, I'm not saying this is true. We're in conspiracy theory speculation here. If you missed the first part, I'm just showing you how any theory can fit the facts. And so I'm force-fitting the facts into this theory. Wouldn't it make more sense that somebody associated with the Clinton campaign funded that troll farm so that later they could say, hey, look at this connection to the, to the campaign? So it's not impossible that the Clinton campaign was behind every bit of the Russia stuff. Like every little story could be. I'm not going to make that claim, but I haven't seen anything that would rule it out yet. Like an insurance policy. If you can't answer who is behind Hillary, then you have no point. Well, Hillary is behind Hillary, and she has lots of supporters in lots of places, and those supporters have money, and they can do things independently with no paper trail that could be for the benefit of the boss. Not saying it happened, because that would be crazy. I'm just saying there are a lot of speculative theories that could fit the facts we're seeing. The strangest thing that I hear about Hillary Clinton is that the reason that Trump won is that Hillary was such a bad campaigner. And I always say the same thing when people say that. Well, she was just the worst campaigner in the world, so Trump got lucky. And I say, first of all, it wasn't luck that Trump also beat the best campaigners on the Republican side, 16 of them. And had Hillary Clinton won, and she would have won against any other Republican, everybody would have said what they said in the beginning. She's the most qualified candidate we've ever seen. All right, let's talk about climate models. I'm going to tack this on the end. It wasn't in my title. All right, so I just tweeted yesterday, I tweeted a link to a Bloomberg article. Now, keep in mind that Bloomberg is not a conservative publication, right? Bloomberg leans left, anti-Trump, by effect, certainly not an announced bias. And one of the things they said was that the climate models have to have a worst case scenario, usually sort of best case, worst case, and that it's typical that they run them so that you know what the range is for their projections of climate doom. And they run a projection out to 2100, right? So, 80 some years from now. And apparently the worst case projection assumed that 80 years from now, the rate of coal as part of our energy solutions, so if coal went from 28% of our energy, which it is now, specifically, is it energy or 28% of our electricity? I'm not sure. But coal is 28% now, and the models assume that by 2100, 80 some years from now, that we would be using 95% or 95% of our electricity would come from coal. Now, they had to adjust that because they finally admitted that the odds, since the long range trend seems to be less coal, not more, that the odds of hitting that worst case where we're a coal all the time everywhere world are actually really low if you're looking at 2100. So remember you thought, well, most of you didn't think it, but think about all the people who have mocked you, because I know most of you, there are probably more skeptics here than there are believers. Think how mercilessly you've been mocked for denying science. And then we find that part of the science was that their climate models assumed that we would go absolutely nuts and that by 2100 we would be using almost entirely coal for our electricity. On the high end, just the one scenario that was supposedly the worst case scenario. Now, doesn't it matter if you get the worst case scenario wrong? Well, it might not matter a lot if you get the in-between scenarios wrong, but it matters a lot if you get the low end and the high end wrong. And the high end wasn't even a good try. Just think about it. This was a new article by Bloomberg, meaning that we've gone all the way to 2018 with this assumption in the mix that coal would go from 28% of our energy to 95% in 2100. Do you know what's going to happen in 80 some years? Absolutely everything's going to be different. We're far more likely to have fully functional fusion reactors. We're far more likely to have Tesla batteries and high yield solar. We're far more likely to have more green energy, far more likely to have developed scrubbers that can clean the atmosphere, far more likely to figure out how to, clean the coal as much as it can be cleaned. There's probably some physical limit to what you can do. But how can you not say that climate science, I'm just going to go say it. The climate predictions that we've been seeing for years assumed something that any reasonable person would know is not even close to reality. That we would go to 95% coal when in fact everything is moving the other direction. Now, if you were going to call that a hoax, Would you be wrong? Because it could still be true that climate warming is a problem. And it could still be wrong that climate is a big problem. But if we've gone to 2018 and only now somebody's flagged the fact that the high end, the most scary part of the prediction, is absolutely ridiculously dishonest. I mean, that's what it is, right? When you say worst case scenario, all right, let me give you some context. I used to make a lot of financial predictions for my work. So I would do budget predictions, financial predictions for different projects. And you always had to do a worst case scenario. If I had walked into my boss with a worst case scenario that looked like, oh yeah, in 2100 we're going to be using pretty much all coal, my boss would have fired me. That's not reasonable. That's not a reasonable worst case scenario. So I'm going to declare that based on that one thing alone, that it is fair to call the climate models, at least the models, a hoax. Somebody said what you're saying is not true. I'm open to be fact checked. I'll wait a moment and put your, you should be able to fit your objection into one sentence probably. So is there somebody who's disagreeing that the worst case scenario is 95% coal use when it's only 28% now and probably will go down? So who has an objection to that based on facts? So the link to the Bloomberg article, yeah. So the link to the Bloomberg article is in my Twitter feed. Yeah. So I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna call this one for the president. I'm gonna call that anytime somebody says, well, let me do this. This will require the beard. President Trump, he said climate science is a hoax, and yet 97% of scientists who study climate disagree. Is he anti-science? Is he anti-science? Huh? Is he anti-science? Now I give you the response. Well, Eric, I've decided his name is Eric. I don't know if you like that, but he seems like his name would be Eric. Well, Eric, did you know that the climate models, the worst case scenario, assumed that coal usage would go from 28% to 95% in 2100? And that there's no possible way that makes sense in any world, and therefore, in all likelihood, we've been misled about how bad climate science could be, because the worst case scenario is the one that people focus on, and it's completely fraudulent. What do you say to that, Eric? I think I hear my phone. And scene. Yeah, I don't know if his name will be Eric. Can anybody suggest a better name for... I need some suggestions. What's a better name for this guy? George, no. No, it can't be an old name. It needs to be sort of a millennial sounding name. Dawson. Sebastian. Sebastian's good. Darren. Chad. Dale. Oh, Dale is good. I like Dale. So far, the funniest one is Dale. Or Josh. Oh, might be Josh. Kale. All right, so that's enough guessing. All right, everybody. I gotta go do something else. I hope you all saw the redacted memo. If you haven't seen it, go to my Twitter feed. You can see the first page. Chauncey. I think Dale is the funniest one. I don't think you can beat Dale. All right. I'm going to think about it a little bit, but I think Gaylord.